The Celestial Concord's deception continued. The Galactic Concord, once a symbol of unity among the stars, was founded on ideals of peace, cooperation, and mutual respect. But ideals, as humanity was beginning to realize, were fragile when weighed against fear and greed. For centuries, the elder species had dictated the terms of progress, maintaining control over the galaxy's resources and technology. Humanity's meteoric rise, a species that clawed its way from primitive existence to spacefaring power in mere millennia, was an anomaly they couldn't ignore. On Earth, the day humanity was inducted into the Concord was immortalized as the Day of Unity. Massive celebrations broke out across continents, fireworks painting the skies with radiant hues as world leaders hailed the beginning of a new era. For a time, it seemed that humanity's darkest days were behind them. They had survived their own wars, ecological collapse, and even their internal divisions to stand among the stars as equals, or so they believed. But the cracks began to show years before the betrayal. Diplomatic meetings grew tense. Resource allocations to human colonies were routinely delayed, often without explanation. Concord patrols operating in human territories became more frequent, their captains asking invasive questions about military capabilities and shipyard production rates. Admiral Karen Grayson was no stranger to politics, but she had always been a soldier at heart. She had seen what humanity was capable of when pushed to the brink. Standing on the bridge of the UNS Resolute, Earth's flagship dreadnought, she reviewed the latest reports. Disturbing patterns had emerged. Missing trade convoys, ships with experienced crews vanishing without a trace, colonies reporting strange surveillance drones of alien origin. Grayson's instincts told her something was wrong, but the Concord Council dismissed her concerns as paranoia. "They fear us," Grayson murmured to herself, staring out at the endless void of stars. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of truth. The final warning came from Valkis Prime, one of humanity's most prosperous colonies. Its lush green fields and temperate climate made it a breadbasket for the outer colonies. Settlers there lived in relative peace, protected by a modest planetary defense grid and a small fleet of orbiting frigates. It was a symbol of everything humanity hoped to achieve through the Concord, a thriving world born of cooperation and effort. But the sky above Valkis Prime turned dark with warships. Thousands of them. Ships bearing the insignia of the Concord descended like a tidal wave, their weapons glowing with deadly intent. The planetary defense grid activated, but it was no match for the overwhelming force. Concord frigates tore through human ships with surgical precision. Ground-based ion cannons fired desperately, managing to down a few enemy vessels, but it wasn't enough. Admiral Grayson received the distress signal in fragments, static-filled. Panic transmissions from Valkis Prime's governor. The voice crackled over the bridge's speakers as Grayson stood frozen, her fists clenched at her sides. "This is Governor Kell of Valkis Prime. We're under attack. Concord ships are, oh God. They've breached the defense grid. This isn't a raid. They're wiping us out. If anyone can hear this, Earth must prepare. They're coming." The message cut off abruptly, leaving an oppressive silence on the Resolute's bridge. Grayson's second-in-command, Commander Rhea Carter, turned to her, her face pale. "What do we do, Admiral? If they've attacked Valkis, Earth is next." Grayson exhaled slowly, forcing herself to think clearly. The Concord wasn't merely targeting a single colony. This was a coordinated assault designed to break humanity's spirit. But they had underestimated one thing: humanity's ability to endure. "We sound the alarm," Grayson said firmly. "Mobilize every ship, every soldier. Send word to the colonies. Tell them to prepare for war. And patch me through to the World Assembly." Moments later, Grayson stood before the holographic council of Earth's leaders. The room was filled with overlapping voices, panic evident on their faces as they tried to make sense of the situation. "Enough." Grayson's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. "Valkis Prime has fallen," she began, her tone grave. "The Concord has turned against us. This isn't an isolated attack. This is an extermination. They fear us. They see our progress as a threat to their dominance, and they've decided to wipe us out before we can rise any further." Gasps rippled through the council, but Grayson didn't pause. "We have two choices. We can lie down and let them destroy us, or we can fight. And let me make this clear. Humanity does not lie down. We've survived every catastrophe our world has thrown at us. We've rebuilt from the ashes time and time again. They think they can break us, but they have no idea who they're dealing with." One of the council members, a frail-looking diplomat, spoke up. "Admiral, with all due respect, how can we hope to stand against the combined might of the Concord? Their fleets outnumber ours 100 to 1. Grayson's eyes burned with determination. "We fight smart. We use their arrogance against them. They've underestimated us before, and they're doing it again. They think we'll crumble, but they've given us something more powerful than any weapon." "What's that?" another leader asked. Grayson leaned forward, her voice like steel. "A reason to fight." On the Resolute, preparations began immediately. Engineers worked tirelessly to upgrade the ship's systems, while pilots trained for relentless hours in combat simulators. Messages were sent to the outer colonies, rallying volunteers to join the resistance. Across Earth, factories shifted to wartime production, churning out weapons, armor, and ships. But humanity's greatest strength lay not in its technology, but in its people. The miners on the asteroid belts, the farmers on distant worlds, the scientists and engineers who had devoted their lives to progress. They came together, united by a single purpose: survival. As the first human fleet began to assemble near Earth's orbit, Grayson stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the stars. She knew the road ahead would be long and brutal, but she also knew one undeniable truth: humanity would not go quietly into the night. "We've faced extinction before," she said softly, as if speaking to the void. "And every time, we fought back. This time will be no different." The stars blinked back at her, silent witnesses to the dawn of humanity's greatest battle. The gathering storm. Admiral Grayson had seen countless battles in her career, but nothing had prepared her for what humanity faced now: a war for survival against an enemy that had once claimed to be an ally. The betrayal of the Concord had sent shockwaves through every human colony, every outpost, and every home on Earth. Now, as fleets mobilized and the factories of Earth churned out weapons at an unprecedented pace, the question loomed over everyone: could humanity truly stand against the might of the Concord? The answer, Grayson believed, lay in strategy. The Concord might have overwhelming numbers, but their arrogance was their Achilles heel. For too long, they had seen humanity as a lesser species, a group of primitives who had stumbled into the stars. They underestimated the resilience and ingenuity that came from centuries of surviving on a hostile, ever-changing world. Grayson's plan began to take shape aboard the Resolute. The ship's war room was a hive of activity as officers, engineers, and strategists debated tactics and analyzed enemy movements. The holographic table in the center of the room displayed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with human-controlled territories marked in blue and Concord fleets represented by ominous red clusters. "The Concord's primary fleet is moving toward the Sol system," said Commander Rhea Carter, pointing to the largest red cluster on the map. "Their trajectory suggests they'll arrive within 3 weeks." Grayson nodded, her sharp eyes scanning the map. "They're not wasting time. They want to decapitate us by taking Earth first. If we lose the Sol system, it's over." Captain Malik Verma, the Resolute's head of intelligence, leaned forward. "We've intercepted fragments of their communications. They're treating this as a cleanup operation. They don't expect us to fight back effectively." "That's their first mistake," Grayson said, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "What about the colonies? Are they mobilizing?" Verma tapped a few commands into his console, and the map updated to show the outer colonies. "The response has been overwhelming. Even the most distant colonies are sending ships and supplies. The Martian shipyards are operating at full capacity, and we've received word from the Europa Research Facility. They're sending prototype weapons and experimental tech. A murmur of approval rippled through the room. Humanity's unity in the face of annihilation was its greatest strength. Where other species might have fractured under the pressure, humanity had come together with a singular purpose. Grayson turned to Lieutenant Zora Chen, the fleet's communications officer. What about the message to the Eridani Alliance? Have they responded? Chen shook her head. No response yet, Admiral. They're probably weighing the risks. Aligning with us means defying the Concord, and that's a dangerous move. Grayson's expression hardened. The Eridani Alliance was a coalition of smaller species who had long chafed under the Concord's dominance. They had the potential to be powerful allies, but they were also cautious, unwilling to provoke the wrath of the galaxy's most powerful coalition. Grayson couldn't blame them. After all, humanity's current predicament was proof of the Concord's ruthlessness. We can't wait for them, Grayson said finally. Prepare a secondary message. Offer them access to our technology, our resources, whatever it takes to bring them to our side. But make it clear that whether they join us or not, humanity will fight. Carter hesitated before speaking. Admiral, with respect, what if they decide to side with the Concord instead? If they turn against us? Grayson cut her off with a wave of her hand. If they side with the Concord, we'll deal with it. But I don't believe they will. They'd been waiting for someone to challenge the status quo. We might just be their best chance. The room fell silent as Grayson's words sank in. It was a gamble, but then again, everything about this war was a gamble. Humanity had no choice but to take risks. Operation Ember. 3 weeks later, the Sol system was a fortress. Earth's orbital defenses had been bolstered with everything humanity could muster. Repurposed mining lasers, asteroid-based missile platforms, and massive particle cannons built into the moon's surface. Civilian ships had been converted into makeshift gunships, their cargo holds bristling with railguns and plasma turrets. Every available warship, from sleek frigates to hulking dreadnoughts, was stationed in Earth's orbit. But Grayson knew that a defensive strategy alone wouldn't be enough. To win, humanity needed to strike back. That was the purpose of Operation Ember. The plan was as audacious as it was dangerous. A small fleet of stealth ships, equipped with experimental cloaking devices from the Europa Research Facility, would infiltrate Concord-controlled space. Their target, the Concord's central logistics hub on the planet Varian Prime. By destroying the hub, they would cripple the enemy's supply lines and buy humanity precious time. Leading the strike team was Captain Elias Ward, a decorated officer known for his unorthodox tactics. Grayson had handpicked him for the mission, trusting his ability to adapt to the unpredictable. In the hangar bay of the Resolute, Grayson met with Ward and his team. The atmosphere was tense but determined as the crew made final preparations. Captain Ward, Grayson said, her tone commanding but calm. You understand the stakes. If this mission succeeds, it could change the course of the war. But if you're compromised... I know the risks, Admiral, Ward said, cutting her off with a confident grin. Don't worry. We'll get the job done. Grayson studied him for a moment, then nodded. Good. Remember, the Concord won't be expecting this. Use that to your advantage. And Captain, make it back in one piece. We're going to need every fighter we've got. Ward saluted, then boarded his ship, the Phantom Spear. One by one, the rest of the strike team's ships followed, their engines glowing faintly as they prepared for launch. As the hangar doors opened, Grayson watched them disappear into the void, a silent prayer on her lips. The first battle. The Concord fleet arrived 2 days later, their numbers stretching across the horizon like a storm cloud. Thousands of ships, sleek, deadly vessels bristling with advanced weaponry, moved into formation, their commanders confident in their superiority. From the bridge of the Resolute, Grayson watched the enemy approach. Around her, the crew was a mix of fear and determination, their hands steady on their consoles despite the odds. "Admiral," Carter said, her voice steady but urgent. "The Concorde fleet is in range. They're hailing us." "Put them through," Grayson ordered. A hologram flickered to life, revealing a Concorde admiral with reptilian features and cold, calculating eyes. His voice was smooth, almost mocking. "Admiral Grayson, humanity has shown remarkable resilience, but this is the end of the road. Surrender now, and we'll make your extinction painless." Grayson stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "You've made one critical error, Admiral." The Concorde officer raised an eyebrow. "And what is that?" "You think humanity is afraid of death," Grayson said, her voice like steel. "But we're not. We've faced extinction before, and every time, we've come back stronger. You've underestimated us, and that will be your undoing." The inferno unleashed. The void of space exploded into chaos as the first salvos were exchanged. On one side, the Concorde fleet moved with machine-like precision, their advanced weaponry and overwhelming numbers a testament to their technological supremacy. On the other, humanity's defenders fought with desperation and ingenuity, turning every ounce of their resources and creativity into a weapon. From the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Grayson stood like an immovable pillar, issuing orders with a calm confidence that belied the inferno outside. Her voice carried over the chaos of the battle as her officers scrambled to execute her commands. "Deploy the asteroid fields," Grayson ordered. "Let's make them fight for every inch of space." Across the battlefield, massive tractor beams activated, launching a field of mined asteroids into the path of the advancing Concorde fleet. These seemingly random chunks of rock, some equipped with hidden explosives, forced the Concorde ships to break formation. As they maneuvered around the debris, humanity's smaller, more agile ships darted in and out of the chaos, exploiting every weakness. On board one of these agile frigates, the Hawkeye, Commander Rhea Carter was in her element. The Hawkeye weaved through the battlefield like a predator, its railguns spitting deadly slugs at enemy ships. Carter's voice rang out over her crew as she directed their attacks. "Target their engines, slow them down, and force them into the asteroid field." The Hawkeye's guns focused on a Concorde destroyer, battering its engines until it drifted helplessly into a cluster of explosive-laden asteroids. The resulting explosion sent shockwaves through the battlefield, briefly halting the Concorde's advance. The Phantom Spear's gamble. Far from the chaos of the main battle, Captain Elias Ward and his strike team aboard the Phantom Spear were deep behind enemy lines. Their cloaking devices hummed faintly, masking them from the Concorde sensors as they approached Virium Prime, the enemy's central logistics hub. The planet loomed ahead, a world of stark contrasts. Massive industrial complexes covered its surface, spewing smoke and energy into the atmosphere. Orbital platforms surrounded the planet like a steel web, bristling with weaponry and patrolled by dozens of Concorde ships. Ward's second-in-command, Lieutenant Kayla Voss, studied the tactical display with a furrowed brow. "This isn't going to be easy, Captain. Their defenses are tighter than we expected." Ward smirked. "Nothing worth doing is ever easy, Lieutenant. What's the status of the decoy drones?" "Ready to deploy," Voss replied. "Good. Launch them." Moments later, a swarm of drones launched from the Phantom Spear, each one emitting false signals designed to mimic human ships. The drones scattered, drawing the attention of the Concorde's orbital platforms and patrol ships. As the enemy scrambled to intercept the decoys, the Phantom Spear and its sister ships slipped through the gaps in their defenses. Their target was a massive orbital fuel depot that served as the lifeblood of the Concorde's logistics network. Without it, their fleets would be stranded, unable to resupply or refuel. "Bring us into position," Ward ordered. "Arm the charges." The Phantom Spear maneuvered into the shadow of the depot, its stealth systems working overtime to keep it hidden. The strike team worked quickly, deploying charges onto the depot's critical systems. As the last charge was set, Voss's voice cut through the tension. "Captain, we've got company. Conquered patrol ships are closing in." Ward cursed under his breath. "How long until the charges are ready?" 2 minutes, Voss replied. "Then we hold them off for 2 minutes, Ward said, gripping the controls. "Engage the cloaking disruption field. Let's make some noise." The Phantom Spear dropped its stealth and opened fire, its weapons tearing into the approaching patrol ships. The sudden attack caught the Concorde off guard, buying precious seconds as the charges ticked down. The turning point. Back in the Sol system, the battle raged on. Despite humanity's ingenuity, the Concorde's superior numbers were beginning to take their toll. Ships on both sides burned in the void, their shattered hulks drifting endlessly. On the Resolute, Admiral Grayson received grim updates from her officers. "The Hawkeye has taken heavy damage, and we've lost contact with the Endurance. The Concorde is pushing through our second line of defense." Grayson clenched her fists. "Tell the third line to hold. No retreats. Every second we buy here is a second for Ward's team to succeed." As if on cue, the tactical display updated to show the Concorde's main fleet shifting its formation. Grayson's eyes narrowed as she studied the movement. "They're leaving a gap in their defenses," she muttered. "Why would they?" Her thoughts were interrupted by a transmission from the Hawkeye. Carter's face appeared on the screen, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. "Admiral, we've picked up chatter from the Concorde fleet. They've detected an Eridani task force on their flank." Grayson's heart surged with hope. The Eridani came through. "Looks like it," Carter said with a faint smile. "They're hitting the Concorde supply lines hard. It's creating chaos in their ranks." Grayson turned to her crew. "This is our chance. Signal all ships, full assault. Break their lines." Across the battlefield, humanity's fleet surged forward, their weapons blazing. The Concorde, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of the Eridani and the renewed human assault, struggled to maintain cohesion. The detonation. On Varium Prime, the charges planted by the Phantom Spear detonated with a deafening roar. The fuel depot erupted into a massive fireball, the explosion visible even from orbit. The shockwave tore through the surrounding orbital platforms, destroying or disabling most of them. Ward's team didn't wait to celebrate. As the Concorde's defenses scrambled to respond, the Phantom Spear and its sister ships activated their cloaking devices and slipped away. "Mission accomplished," Ward said, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Let's get back to the fleet." The aftermath. The destruction of Varium Prime's logistics hub proved to be the turning point of the war. Deprived of their primary supply lines, the Concorde fleet in the Sol system found itself overstretched and vulnerable. The combined forces of humanity and the Eridani pressed their advantage, driving the Concorde back. On the Resolute, Grayson allowed herself a rare moment of satisfaction as reports of the enemy's retreat came in. But she knew the war was far from over. The Concorde was wounded, not defeated, and they would undoubtedly return with even greater force. As she stood on the bridge, watching the stars beyond, Grayson made a silent vow. Humanity would be ready. No matter the cost, they would ensure their place among the stars. The price of defiance. The echoes of victory at Varium Prime rippled through the galaxy, but the celebration was short-lived. While humanity's fleet had pushed back the Concorde, the cost was staggering. Entire squadrons had been wiped out, and Earth's outer colonies bore the scars of orbital bombardments. For every victory, there were hundreds of losses, and the realization weighed heavily on the shoulders of every survivor. The hidden cost. In the aftermath of the battle, Admiral Grayson stood in the command room of the Resolute. The room, usually bustling with energy, now felt oppressively silent. On the massive holographic display, a grim tally of losses glowed. Hundreds of ships destroyed, millions of lives lost. Her officers lingered in silence, the weight of their sacrifices evident in their faces. Grayson's voice, sharp and resolute, broke the silence. "Send word to all surviving ships and colonies. I want a full status report on our remaining assets, and send recovery teams to the outer colonies. There might still be survivors." Commander Jack Sanders, her trusted aide, stepped forward. His face bore the exhaustion of a man who hadn't slept in days. "Admiral, we've confirmed that the Concorde has retreated to their outer sectors, but their communications suggest they're regrouping. This isn't over." "It never was," Grayson replied coldly. "This was just a skirmish. They underestimated us. Next time, they won't make the same mistake." Anders hesitated before speaking. "There's something else. We've picked up chatter about the Concorde deploying their Genesis protocol. We don't know exactly what it entails, but it's being described as a final solution to eliminate resistant species." Grayson's jaw tightened. "Then we have no time to waste. Assemble the Council of Sol. It's time we showed the galaxy what humanity is truly capable of." The Council of Sol. On Earth, beneath the war-torn remains of New Geneva, the Council of Sol convened in a secure bunker. Representatives from every colony and Earth's remaining nations gathered around a circular table. The room was a patchwork of old-world grandeur and wartime necessity. Ornate walls marred by reinforced steel supports, chandeliers replaced by harsh LED lighting. Admiral Grayson stood at the center, her commanding presence drawing the attention of every delegate. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've bought ourselves a brief reprieve, but make no mistake, the Concorde will return, and when they do, they'll bring their full strength." A delegate from Mars, Governor Evelyn Chow, raised her hand. "Admiral, with all due respect, our resources are stretched to the breaking point. Our factories can't keep up with the demand for ships and weapons. If the Concorde launches another assault, we won't survive." Grayson nodded. "I'm aware of our limitations, Governor. That's why we need to think beyond traditional warfare. Humanity's strength has always been its creativity, its ability to adapt. We need unconventional strategies." A murmur spread through the room. Finally, a grizzled man in the corner spoke up. It was Dr. Elias Rourke, a scientist renowned for his controversial ideas. "Are you suggesting we take the fight to them, Admiral? Because I've been working on something that might give us the edge we need." Grayson's eyes narrowed. "What are you proposing, Doctor?" Rourke stepped forward, placing a small device on the table. It emitted a faint hum, and a holographic projection appeared, showing a swirling vortex of energy. "This is Project Catalyst. It's a prototype weapon that can destabilize the gravitational fields of entire star systems. If deployed strategically, we could cut off the Concorde supply routes permanently." The room erupted in debate. Some delegates hailed it as a potential game-changer, while others decried it as reckless and dangerous. Governor Chow voiced the concern that lingered in many minds. "If this backfires, we could destroy entire star systems, including our own." Grayson raised a hand to silence the room. "Desperate times call for desperate measures. But we won't make this decision lightly. I'll lead a task force to assess the viability of Project Catalyst. In the meantime, I want every colony working together to fortify our defenses." The Concorde's countermove. While humanity strategized, the Concorde was far from idle. Deep within their central command on the planet Cytherus Prime, the Concorde's supreme executor convened with her council. The executor, an imposing figure with a crystalline exoskeleton that shimmered in the dim light, studied a holographic map of the galaxy. "The humans are proving resilient," the executor said, her voice an unsettling mix of organic and synthetic tones. "Their victory at Varium Prime was not without merit, but it was also their mistake. They've shown us their capacity for resistance, and now we will extinguish it." A subordinate, a lanky alien with glowing blue eyes, bowed deeply. "The Genesis protocol is ready, Executor. With your command, we can deploy it to cleanse their home system." The executor's multifaceted eyes gleamed. "Not yet. Humanity's strength lies in their unpredictability. If we annihilate them outright, we lose the opportunity to study their methods. Deploy a vanguard fleet to harass their colonies. Keep them distracted while we prepare a demonstration of the protocol's power." The subordinate nodded. "It will be done." A mission of no return. Back on the Resolute, Grayson prepared for what could be her most dangerous mission yet. The task force assembled to test Project Catalyst consisted of some of humanity's most brilliant minds and bravest soldiers. Among them were Commander Rhea Carter of the Hawkeye and Dr. Elias Work himself. The Resolute set course for an uninhabited star system on the edge of Concord-controlled space. The plan was to test Catalyst's effects on an unimportant system before deciding whether to deploy it in the war. As they approached the target system, tension filled the air. The crew knew they were venturing into enemy territory, with a weapon that could either save humanity or doom it. In the engineering bay, Rourke worked tirelessly to calibrate the device. Carter watched from the doorway, her arms crossed. "This thing better work, Doc. If it doesn't, we're all dead." Rourke glanced up, his eyes wary but determined. "It'll work, but even if it doesn't, I'd rather die trying than sit back and wait for the Concorde to wipe us out." Carter nodded, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Fair enough." The test. As the Resolute entered the target system, Grayson gave the order to deploy Project Catalyst. The device was launched into the system's central star, its energy signature activating as it plunged into the seething plasma. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the star began to shimmer unnaturally, its light twisting and distorting as gravitational anomalies spread outward. The anomalies engulfed the system, destabilizing the orbits of planets and moons. Within minutes, the entire system was collapsing in on itself. The crew of the Resolute watched in stunned silence as the star imploded, taking the system with it. The destructive power was unlike anything they had ever seen. "It works," Rourke whispered, a mix of awe and horror in his voice. "It actually works." Grayson's expression was unreadable. "Prepare for extraction. We've got what we came for." The Concorde's response. But as the Resolute turned to leave, alarms blared across the ship. A Concorde patrol fleet had arrived, drawn by the massive energy signature of Catalyst's activation. The Resolute and its escort ships were now trapped. Grayson's voice rang out across the bridge. "All hands, prepare for battle. We're not dying here today." The battle that followed was fierce and desperate. The Resolute's crew fought with everything they had, buying time for their scientists to extract the data from Catalyst's test. Carter's frigate, the Hawkeye, led a daring charge to disable the Concorde's flagship, clearing a path for the Resolute to escape. The weapon of hope and horror. The Resolute emerged from hyperspace battered but intact. Its crew bore the scars of their encounter with the Concorde patrol fleet, burns, wounds, and the unmistakable hollow gaze of survivors who had narrowly escaped death. Admiral Grayson stood on the bridge, her steely eyes fixed on the viewport as the stars streaked past. They had the data, the proof that Project Catalyst worked. But deep down, Grayson knew the galaxy would never be the same again. Debriefing the aftermath. In the conference chamber of the Resolute, Grayson convened her senior staff and Project Catalyst's key personnel. Dr. Elias Work, still disheveled from the intense battle, presented the findings. "Admiral," Work began, his voice heavy with both pride and dread. "The test was a success. Catalyst stabilized the star with an efficiency far beyond our projections. The energy ripple collapsed the entire system within minutes. If used strategically, it could cripple Concorde supply lines, destroy fleet staging grounds, or even wipe out key homeworlds." The room fell silent. Commander Jax Anders was the first to speak. "And how long until the Concorde realizes what we've done? If they figure out we have this weapon, they'll stop at nothing to destroy us." Work nodded. "That's the problem. Catalyst leaves a unique energy signature. They'll analyze the remnants of the system we targeted. If they haven't already guessed, they'll know soon enough." Grayson's voice cut through the murmurs. "This weapon changes everything, but it also puts a target on our backs. We need to act decisively before the Concord launches their next offensive. A galaxy divided. Back on Earth, news of Project Catalyst spread through the military and political ranks like wildfire. While some hailed it as humanity's salvation, others decried it as a weapon of mass genocide. Protests erupted in the outer colonies, where survivors of Concord bombings demanded retribution. Meanwhile, on Mars, a faction of scientists and ethicists issued a statement condemning Catalyst, warning of its potential to destabilize not just the Concord but the entire galaxy. In the Sol Council chamber, the debate reached a fever pitch. Grayson stood at the center, her figure commanding as always, but even she could feel the weight of the council's discontent. "This is madness," shouted Governor Evelyn Chow of Mars. "We've spent centuries condemning weapons of mass destruction. Are we really so desperate that we're willing to become the very monsters we're fighting?" A representative from the outer colonies shot back. "Easy for you to say, Governor. Your cities haven't been bombarded. Your people haven't been enslaved. Catalyst is our only chance to end this war before the Concord wipes us out." The room erupted into chaos. Grayson raised her hand, her voice booming over the din. "Enough. This isn't about politics or morality. It's about survival. The Concord won't stop until humanity is extinct. Catalyst is a weapon of last resort, but make no mistake, it may be the only thing that saves us." Her words hung in the air like a storm cloud. The council fell silent, each member grappling with the harsh reality before them. The Concord strikes back. As humanity debated the ethics of Catalyst, the Concord made their move. On the colony of New Eden, humanity's most distant outpost, Concord forces launched a surprise assault. The attack was swift and brutal, leaving no time for evacuation. New Eden's lush forests and towering cities were reduced to smoldering ruins in a matter of hours. The message was clear. The Concord would punish humanity for its defiance. When news of New Eden's fall reached Earth, it shattered any remaining illusions of peace. The Sol Council, previously divided, now faced a united enemy that would stop at nothing to crush them. Grayson called an emergency meeting aboard the Resolute. "The Concord has escalated this war. If we don't respond in kind, more colonies will fall." Commander Rhea Carter, who had narrowly survived the New Eden assault, spoke with barely restrained fury. "Admiral, we can't wait any longer. We need to strike back with Catalyst." The Catalyst Plan. Grayson's War Council convened in a secret location, a derelict station orbiting a gas giant in the outer reaches of the Sol system. The station's hollowed halls served as a stark reminder of humanity's struggles, a fitting backdrop for the most important decision of the war. "We've identified a target," Grayson began, projecting a holographic map of Concord-controlled space. "The system of Cytheris Prime. It's not just their central command hub. It's also a critical supply route. Without it, the Concord's fleets will be crippled." The room fell into a tense silence. Anders broke it, his voice low. "Cytheris Prime isn't just a military target. It's a populated system. Billions of lives. Lives that fuel their war machine." Grayson interjected. "Every ship, every soldier that attacks us comes from Cytheris Prime. If we don't stop them there, more of our people will die." Dr. Work stepped forward hesitantly. "Admiral, there's something you need to know. Catalyst isn't just a weapon. It's a chain reaction. If we deploy it on Cytheris Prime, it won't just destroy the star. The energy ripple could spread to neighboring systems." The weight of his words sank into the room. Carter spoke up, her voice filled with resolve. "Admiral, we're out of options. If we don't use Catalyst now, we might not get another chance." Grayson nodded slowly. "Then it's decided. Prepare the fleet. We strike at Cytheris Prime." The final mission. The fleet assembled at the edge of Concord space, a ragtag armada of humanity's remaining ships. The Resolute led the charge, its hull scarred from countless battles, but still standing tall. Beside it were the Hawkeye and other surviving vessels, each crewed by men and women who knew this could be their last mission. As the fleet approached Xitharus Prime, tension filled the air. Soldiers and scientists worked side by side to ready catalysts for deployment. Rourke oversaw the final preparations, his hands trembling as he activated the device. In the command center, Grayson addressed the fleet. "This is it. The battle that will decide the fate of humanity. We didn't ask for this war, but we will end it on our terms. Fight with everything you have. Fight for Earth, for our colonies, for the future." The fleet emerged from hyperspace into a storm of fire. Concord ships swarmed to meet them, their sleek vessels outnumbering humanity's fleet 2-1. The battle was chaos, a deadly ballet of lasers, missiles, and explosions that lit up the void. As the Resolute fought its way toward Xitharus Prime's star, Catalyst was loaded into a launch pod. Carter piloted the Hawkeye in a desperate maneuver to clear a path, her ship taking heavy damage in the process. Finally, the moment arrived. Catalyst was launched into the star, its energy signature activating as it plunged into the searing plasma. The cost of victory. The fleet barely escaped as the star began to collapse. A wave of energy erupted, consuming everything in its path. Xitharus Prime and its surrounding systems were obliterated in a cataclysmic explosion. The Concord fleet was decimated, their central command annihilated. But as the surviving ships regrouped, the weight of what they had done settled over them. Billions of lives, enemy and innocent alike, had been lost. The crew of the Resolute watched in silence as the light of the explosion faded into the void. Grayson stood on the bridge, her expression unreadable. "We've won," she said quietly. "But at what cost?" The war wasn't over, but humanity had delivered a blow that would echo through the galaxy. As the fleet set course for home, the question lingered. Had they saved humanity or doomed it to a legacy of destruction?